City Council work session for Monday, September 17th. We have several items on our agenda tonight, the first of which is our community conversation. I can't have my class preparation. Thank you. I started to say participation, and everyone, thank you. Thanks, Sonia. So I'll turn it over to, we've got our guests from KU Public Management Center here tonight. I'll turn it over to Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, sir. Very excited to be able to bring this presentation to the council tonight, kind of finalize what, we'll take a quick look back and then finalize what October 1st will look like and what we're all, get us all on the same page for it. To that end, as the mayor has indicated, we have folks from the KU Public Management Center and emeritus from the KU Public Management Center who's come back to put the band back together. I heard the term used earlier, so that we can have the same excellent group be doing this for us this time as well. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Laura.
You want me to use the mic? Sure thing. All right. There we go. There we go. All right. So what we hope to do tonight is to, again, get us prepared and you as a council prepared for the community conversation that's going to happen in just 2 short weeks, 2 weeks from tonight. So again, thanks for the opportunity to come back and be a part of this process again. We're excited about that. So what we're going to do tonight is work you through a little bit of a process that will be similar to what happens with the public. And the work that we have you do tonight, thinking back a bit on successes and celebrations, and then thinking forward in a visioning way about Raymore, about what makes Raymore home, and about your strategic focus areas will also help to inform us to develop kind of the final questions that we want to ask the community. We want to make sure we get at what you really need and want to hear as a council as you're continuing to plan going forward. So we'll work through a process to do that tonight. We'll start with an overview of the process that we used last time. We'll do a little bit of celebration, do some visioning work, and then talk some of the details of the actual engagement in 2 weeks. That's a quick overview of our plan for tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan Morris, formerly from the Public Management Center, now the Director of the Government Training Institute at MARC, to talk about the 2016 process.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Good evening. It's nice to see you all again. So as Laura mentioned, I'm going to give just a quick summary and refresh your memory for those of you who are on council and were present for the community conversations and set the context for our work tonight. But the council and the city manager initiated the strategic planning process in early 2015 with some conversations around wanting to set some strategic goals and engage the community in that process. And Dr. John Nalbandian, who's Professor Emeritus of Public Administration at the KU School of Public Affairs and Administration and is internationally known for his local government expertise, was engaged by the council to do a visioning exercise in a work session around dreams and fears for the future of Raymore. And so the council weighed in on what we saw for the future and began to articulate that, and that was built into some themes. From that, there were 6 focus areas, if you will, that the council identified that they then wanted the community to engage around. And so the council really put that in play, and then our work was to build that out. So then the KU Public Management Center was engaged shortly after that to build out a 3-phase strategic planning initiative. And the first phase was around recruitment, and that was recruitment of stakeholders, leveraging the focus areas that the council had identified and come up with a meaningful way to engage the public to bring them forward for a series of community engagement conversations. As you will recall, the city did a fantastic job of branding that. It was called the Reimagine Raymore with a unique logo. There were banners and yard signs all over town and any number of other means through social media and otherwise to promote the event. And our job was to design the process, to put it all together, and to come up with 3 different community conversations that we launched in February of 2016. And within the conversations, one of the things that the city articulated that you were wanting to do was to really build the enthusiasm and to create meaningful engagement and to approach it in a novel way. And so what we did was we engaged a vendor named Covision that is expert in cutting-edge technology that's often referred to as 21st century town hall technology. And we brought that into our facilitation process. So our role was to pose questions to the community, and then Covision partnered with us, and we had, at the first event, we had about 200 people in the room, more than 135 citizens that were in attendance there. And we set up a series of round tables, and at each round table was an iPad. There was a wireless server on site, and we were able to pose facilitation questions, discussion questions from the front of the room, and then participants at each table were able to discuss and respond to that in small groups of about 8 individuals. And then in real time, the community's responses were input into the iPads, and all of that was uploaded to the on-site wireless server, at which point there were a group of us that were called the theme team, and our job was to identify common themes that emerged from community responses. And in a matter of minutes, we were able to distill the feedback from nearly 150 people and then project it back up onto the big screen in the form of a PowerPoint. And we did that for the first session. It allowed us to also do some multi-voting. So if you'll recall, we also had clickers, little remote controls, where people were able to vote on what they considered to be their top priorities. So that went very well. We were wildly pleased with the partnership with Covision and the ability, the technology, to really capture citizens' words in their own language. And so it literally was quotes that we were able to put up on the screen, and people could see that not only were they heard, but their ideas were being used and moved forward with. The council then re-engaged for our second community conversation, Covision, and we brought them back a second time, and then that was an iterative process. So we asked an initial set of questions at the first session, and then we went back and analyzed the feedback that we'd received from the citizens, and then we built follow-up questions for the second engagement. And so we were able to flesh out in more detail and with greater clarity what the citizens really imagined for the future of Raymore. And then we engaged the public on a third community conversation towards the end of February 2016, and that was to bring everything full circle. And so upon the conclusion of that, by the time we were done, we had more than 350 participants throughout those 3 sessions. Just as an aside, I did a project for the city of Kansas City, Missouri not long after, and they were doing a public engagement segment, and I told them about Raymore, and they said, Raymore? Well, how many did you have there? And I said, well, we just engaged about 350 people. And they said, well, we had about 60 show up at ours. So that was kind of a point of pride there. So we were very excited about that. And as you know, many great things came from that, and some of that was already in the works, and then some of it came directly out of the process. And the 3 of us tonight just got to tour Centerview right before we started the meeting here, and what a fantastic facility. So it's fun to see how you've brought that forward and the good work that you've been able to do with all of this. And I know many of your residents, and I've run into people who've talked about the fun things they've seen come forward. So what we ended with after the February 2016 event was we came back to council in March of 2016 and presented a summary report. We built out a strategic framework, and at that point the staff took it from there and built out a draft of a strategic plan, which became the operating document for you, and you did a accompanying work plan, a communications plan, and really just made great things happen from that. And so our job now is to re-engage you Tonight is really important because as we think about the October 1st event, one of the keys is really being clear about what success will look like and what kinds of questions we wish to pose to the public going forward. And so we're excited to re-engage with you to do just that. All right, thank you.
All right. So as we move forward, as Jonathan said, you know, the event happened, the 3 meetings, the strategic plan was developed, and you've been operating under that strategic plan now for almost 3 years. So we wanted to start out just having you reflect for a little bit on what you've accomplished. You know, what as a council do you celebrate? What are you proud of as you think about the work that you've done, as you reflect as a member of this council, or even as a citizen of Raymore? What are you proud of? You know, just take a minute or two and just kind of think to yourself, and then we just want to capture some of those things. I think sometimes we move forward in processes and we kind of forget to celebrate what we've accomplished before we start talking about, you know, what's next. But I think it's important to reflect on, you know, what's working, what's been successful. So again, just take a minute, and then we'll capture some thoughts from the council. So what would you call out as successes? What are you particularly proud of?
The overwhelming passage of the general obligation bond, almost 80%. It wasn't over 80% on streets and very close within a thin margin of 8% passage on the park projects. So it's clearly something that our citizens were desperately in want and need of.
So really, really strong support for that.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm. Who else? Yeah.
I would say probably the involvement of our citizens in all the processes. It was encouraging to see the 300 plus people show up for the community conversation, but it seems like our community, our residents are very involved in what's happening, and I'd say I was proud of that.
People have stayed engaged. They've gotten involved in things on an ongoing basis, it sounds like. Great, great. What else? What else are you proud of? What other successes do you have to celebrate?
I would say that, you know, we've updated and added to infrastructure and yet still not raised taxes.
Right, updated and added to infrastructure without raising taxes.
I think one of the things I'm most proud of is that we've solidified the credibility of this body, the city, with our developers and our prospective developers that we're trying to bring into our city. They obviously see our commitment and how honest and earnest it is, and I think that it's very well received, and it has opened a lot more doors than what it has in the past, and quite frankly, that is a huge thing for me.
All right, so relationship with developers, credibility, open doors that come from that. What else? What other successes?
You know, when we came together for the community conversations and the responses were given to us by you all, this body and the staff in particular moved forward very quickly with developing an actual strategic plan from that information. So we were, they spent a lot of time on it, I know staff did, spent a lot of time on it with input from this council, and they really were successful in kind of grabbing what they got from the community. So it showed that it wasn't one of those opportunities to interact with the community. It was actually one that was beneficial in getting their input and moving forward with that input. So I think we've really built that, as what Kevin was talking about, we really solidified that relationship with our community because we have moved forward successfully with the input that they gave us.
So that input translated into a plan, and people can see that you've moved on that plan. Yeah. What else?
Fairly quickly, too.
Mhm. Other successes, other things you'd like to celebrate.
The great leaps forward that we've made in economic development since that time. The priority of our citizens, and we've already had the successful Cadence project. We've got several others that are going to be coming forward. We know we have a number of developers, multiple developers looking at the city for both residential and commercial.
All right, those leaps in economic development on both the residential and commercial side.
I was going to add to that end, also, we've retained most of the businesses in town. We've added businesses, but we've retained most of the ones that were existing.
Yeah, so adding businesses and retaining businesses. Yeah, I recall that as a significant part of the community conversations. Yeah.
I think one of the things that's come of it, and it's really a lot of these different ideas kind of wrapped into one, is just maintaining the reputation of Raymore as a first-class city. Part of that has to do with the engagement that we saw in the community conversations and the way that we've maintained engagement with people in the community through social media and other kind of advertisements, signs on the streets, following through with the GeoBond projects. I mean, we have signs up so people can see this is a project you voted for, and look, it's finished or it's in the works. The economic development wraps into that too. I mean, the economic development is because we have great staff. We have a great reputation as a first-class city. We continue to build homes here in Raymore, so the business development as well as residential development, involvement of volunteers. We never wait very long with an opening on any of our boards. We have the Arts Commission since the community conversations. So I think all of that kind of wraps into just that excellent reputation we have. And we've shown people we listen, and that's part of that reputation as well.
So reputation, credibility with citizens, engagement from citizens, and all those examples you gave around that.
You know, as a follow-on to that too, even the piece of paper you gave us tonight to look at, we have in a corner, we've kind of overlooked it, but we've rebranded ourselves, and that particular brand has gone over pretty well with the community. They're beginning to recognize it. The Come Home to More has caught on. I like it that you've engaged that with the word home in the title article there. So I really feel like that part of that rebranding has been successful too. I'm really proud of that as well. I was part of that rebranding team with Mr. Holman and other members of the community, and really proud that we moved forward with that.
So the rebranding initiative and that whole impact on community identity. Sure. What you were thinking about or wrote down that you haven't had a chance to share?
I've got one. It kind of comes from some of the other comments made, especially Ms. Abdelgawad's, but in addition to the leaps and bounds we've made in economic development, the communications department has advanced forward into the 25th century. They really have changed. They truly have changed how we communicate with our citizens and how our citizens communicate with us. And we literally jumped from the Stone Age centuries into the future with 2 staff members, and they've done a fantastic job. And I know the citizens see that. Again, it kind of falls back into the comments they've made, but that's been, I think, probably one of the key pieces of what we've done over the last 2 years or so.
And building on that, thinking back to the years of surveys we've had from citizens in the past, I feel like we've done all of this since the community conversations without letting any of the our bragging points falter. Raymore is still a safe place. You know, all those things that people have bragged about for years in Raymore, those are still the solid foundation we build on. We've just been able to add these things on top of that.
So you built on a solid foundation, and you didn't let anything happen to that foundation while you were moving forward in some new directions. Great. What a list! My goodness. I mean, in a short time period. I mean, you should feel very proud of what you've accomplished. You've accomplished a lot. Okay, so last call on successes celebration before I get you thinking about the future a little bit. Anything else we should put up there? All right. I'm going to move you forward then and have you think a bit about the future. You know, the thing about a strategic plan, you've got a great strategic plan. You know, it went from the community process to the work of the staff to clear goals to initiatives to action steps. You do a great job of attaching that to all of your processes and your decision making. But we want to make sure that you're continuing to think about, you know, what's next? You know, what does the future hold? When Jonathan was talking about the initial process, he talked about the work that Dr. Nalbandian did with the folks who were on the council then, about kind of a whole hopes and dreams exercise that ended up becoming, you know, the strategic themes that ultimately were streamlined into the 4 strategic focus areas that you have today. We're not going to go through that whole process tonight, but I do think it's important to step back from the specific things you've accomplished and just to reflect a bit on what success looks like to you in the future. So I'm going to ask you, you've got a yellow piece of cardboard in front of you, council members, and I want you to take about 5 minutes. And I just want you to answer the question, what would you like to be able to say about Raymore in 10 years? You know, 10 years down the road, what would you want to be able to tell people about your city? You know, if you think about the successes we've just captured that you're really proud of over the last 3 years, what would you want to be able to say 10 years from now about Raymore? You can capture that in a few words. You could write a few sentences. I just want you to think about that just individually, and then we're just going to ask you just to share that. We're not going to process that or anything, but I think it's really, really important to always be thinking about where are you trying to head, where are you trying to go. Some people like to think about it in terms of maybe the legacy they'd like to leave behind, but spend about 5 minutes. How would you like to be able to describe Raymore in 10 years? Take about 2 more minutes. All right, I think most folks are winding up. So, we really just want to take a few minutes and just hear from each council member. Just kind of read your vision. We'll capture a few points from that, and as you listen, just reflect on that. This isn't about reaching consensus. This isn't about setting any specific goals, but it's really about, what your vision is. What your hopes are for this community that you call home. So why don't we start at the end of the table and maybe go around? That'd be great. Thank you.
All right. I've written. Our most successful young people choose Raymore as the place to raise the future generations of more successful young people instead of moving away, i.e. jobs close by, great opportunities for leisure in Raymore. Give her a second.
All right, so
I've got more, but
yeah. So young people stay, raise the next generation of young people, great opportunities for jobs and recreation in Raymore.
Also, new businesses that employ Raymore and at the same time alleviate the tax burden on homeowners. This while continuing to beautify the area. And then finally, lead Cass County to have outlying areas voluntarily annexed into our city from highways east and west, from east to west.
New businesses, relieving the tax burden on the residential side. And successful annexations within Cass County. Yeah, great. All right, thank you. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so I don't write sentences. Mine's kind of a individual
Okay.
words, bullet pointed
You could even have drawn a picture.
So starting with a great place to work, a great place to live, a great place for all ages and diverse. No need to leave, a city that has it all. Unique art, unique events, unique venues. Green, both clean with best practice, earth-friendly, but also green as in parks with trees and grass. We don't want to be just a concrete city. And then finally, community, a community that has pride, a community that's safe, friendly, and where people feel in the know.
All right. So a great place to live, a great place to work. Lots of things around a green community, both in terms of beauty and also in terms of sustainability, community for all ages, and a few other things you said around that. So very good, excellent. Yes, next one.
All right, I'm Tom. I'm the newest councilman. But in my years here in Raymore, 20 years as a business owner, what I can tell you is a fast expanding city of growth, not only for the business, but the families. And, but we still keep that hometown bread and breakfast feeling. That's what people want. We don't inundate our community with the businesses. We know how to separate the business and grow what we need to do. Not like some cities who mix them together, and most people, what I always heard for years here, I hope they don't just bring all that manufacturing, all that business down in our backyards. But we don't. Raymore knows how to grow. Raymore knows how to specify their areas of growth for commercial, areas for residential, and they've done a good job of that. That's why people come here. They know they can have, you know, you go home, it's home, rooftops, people playing, you don't hear all the hustle bustle till you come over to the business where we're building and we're growing for them. And they love that, and that's what you got here from a lot of people for over the years. And yet we still retain our businesses. We still grow businesses as we retain, and knowing a lot of business owners over here for the years, we were always a plus to bring business. We were never afraid of competition. And Raymore is not afraid to bring the business and get the competition, and the business owners, likewise, they like that. But keeping that separation is so, to me, significant. And when you talk to people, and I'll be honest, a lot of people, they talk about Raymore as the next step up of a city in this area around, and people, how do you do it? How are you so good? How do you have what you have? And when people talk about moving to the Kansas City area, they take surveys like Cerner did a few years back, and they weren't going way over to east. They wanted to come south, and they wanted to come to Cass County. And on some of the surveys a few years ago, we were talking about when they brought them to the business owners, they want to come Raymore. The people here are about Raymore all over. They know where Raymore exists in North Cass, South Kansas City. And people want to be here, and they want to bring their families here. We've got grade A schools. We've got grade A protection of the police, fire, great businesses, great personnel, our city government. The infrastructure of the city itself is so magnificent and magnified to me than a lot of cities. And that's a positive growth, and that's where the growth is coming from. Getting a mix of the corporate, but not overbounding the growth of the residentials, and keep them separate. And I think people here, they do, they love it. And
so continue, I think I'm hearing continue to have, you know, positive, smart growth, but really maintaining that hometown feel, that community feel that makes Raymore home. Yes. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Next up.
How I'd like to see Raymore in 10 years, that's what, okay. That's
right.
All right, just wanted to make sure. I'd like to see us as the #1 suburb in the area. A place where singles would come here, families would come here, and people would even retire here. So I want it all. I would like us in 10 years to absolutely be a community of all ages. At the same time, I would hope that we had controlled growth and that we did it the right way, a planned way, and we to maintain still the quality of life that we have today. Not just grow to grow, but do it to make sense. And that in 10 years that we would, probably going to hear me say this a lot, but in 10 years, we're not overburdening our citizens with a high tax structure, that we keep maintaining a physical controlled community, that we can pay our bills and not be deep in debt. That's how I'd like to see us in 10 years.
Thank you. So #1 suburb, fiscally sustainable, smart growth, community of all ages. Yeah.
I wrote that in 10 years, I'd like to see our city have a variety of amenities, attractions, and businesses that both serve and employ our residents. I want to continue to lead our demographic and low crime rates. I want our citizens to feel safe, connected, and happy to call Raymore home. I would like to see us to continue to set the standard amongst similar sized cities, like Kevin said, and neighboring cities to be amongst the best or the best in our area. And finally, I did write that I would like that to see Jim Fearborn remain our city manager in 10 years. So you don't have to write that down.
So keep Jim around. a bit of a focus on amenities, and amenities not just for citizens and residents, but also thinking about from the context of employment, and then maintaining those things that are important to citizens around safety and around connectedness and those things. Very good.
I'm sorry, I had to write it, and I think I even spelled
it's
it
there.
correctly. I think I even spelled it correctly.
I think you did. I think you did. Yep. Yep. Excellent. Touche, touche, touche. All right, with that, who's next?
You got to give me a second to recompose myself after that one. It's not often I get to see Jim laugh like that. What I wrote down was that we are the largest leading city in Cass County in 10 years. And I've heard some of my other colleagues speak that way. I speak more generally, and that's a very abstract and a broad term. It's it can be taken out of context, but I'll give you my frame of mind that if we are the largest leading city in Cass County, we're doing something right with our housing, with our business draw, with how we function as an entity. So that's what that means. Then that we are a destination city for our parks, events, such as Farmers Market, our upcoming amphitheater, Centerview building, our arts displays, and I really want to be the premier employment employer, where we draw those people that are the top of the top to our city to work for us, to continue driving and giving our citizens everything that they've come to expect and then more. Award-winning neighborhoods and housings. You know, a very abstract thing there, but a very broad term. Also to foster upcoming citizens in many fields, such as our arts and our leaders in our industries. To be the standard that our surrounding neighbors strive to be like. That's what I got.
All right. The largest leading city in Cass County, premier employer, lots of things around destination city, and lots of things around neighborhoods and housing. Thank you.
Very similar comments. I had for mine was the Raymore is still a quality community, safe and welcoming. Have a good mix of businesses and retail options that leads to the workforce development and having skilled and professional options for the employers to move beyond just the bedroom community term, but also have the opportunity to have options for work for all age groups, and also entertainment options and business options, as well as have also excellent park and recreational programs and events that gives those options for the citizens to express themselves, whether it be through the arts or music, as well as some either physical activities, sports venues with our amphitheater, which should be in full swing in 10 years, having musical options and venues and events in that area. So having that complete 360 of options for the citizens, so that when they, while they're here, as it's been said earlier, from graduation to retirement, their options are here, and we're that first-class city of the Cass County. So.
All right. That first-class city, safe and welcoming community, the 360 that you talked about, skilled and professional jobs, all the various entertainment parks options. So very good.
I'm not going to read mine, they're going to be fun. That's why you're last. Well, now, I remember, I may not have much going for me, but I have kind of the memory of an elephant. When Dr. Nalbandian did this 3 years ago, he told us to write it in the form of an article, like if we're writing for a magazine, how we saw the city 10 or 20 years.
He
so
did.
I wrote the
He
sequel.
did.
I wrote the follow-up to my articles, how I did mine.
Right.
That's why it took so
great.
long.
Well, let's
right?
hear the sequel then.
Well,
Very good.
it's been several years since I wrote my original article on Missouri's best-kept secret, and what has happened since is even more exciting than before. This wonderful city, which was tagged for years as a bedroom community, has blossomed and now rivals most places in the region as a destination destination location. Raymore, Missouri is a perfect mix of restaurants, shops, and entertainment venues. The amphitheater draws some of the hottest talent around and is quickly becoming known as the shining star on the hill. Raymore has also added a high-end industrial area and business parks that now complete this city that is truly the flagship city of the Midwest. Do yourself a favor and visit this modern, safe, and beautiful place. You won't be disappointed.
Very good. Thank you. Very nice. Very nice. Yay. Let's give some applause here. Very nice. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Mr. Mayor.
Well, everybody's pretty much covered all my points here, because I originally written, from my background, it's still a safe and clean community. It's still a great school district, and the city works well with them, because that is one of the draws to our community. Well-planned and cared for infrastructure, more jobs to be available to make Raymore a destination to work as well as live. Solid conservative growth that was well planned, and we didn't waver or diminish from our high standards for growth.
All right. Still a safe, clean city, great schools, smart infrastructure growth, jobs. Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. This is just really, really interesting, just the breadth of vision that you've brought as you look ahead, thinking about what you have accomplished, but what you want to see happen, you know, as you think over the next decade or so. And we know that if we don't have a vision as to what we want to see down the road, now the things that, you know, you do tomorrow impact whether or not what you want to see in 10 years happen. So it's really, really important to always kind of keep that long-range vision in front of you. You know, maybe the strategic plan might be looking at you know, a shorter time frame, but always having that vision in place. So, all right, so keep those sheets of paper in front of you, and we're gonna shift gears and dig a little bit deeper now, but I think you may have some things from your vision that are relevant to the next part of this agenda. So I'm gonna turn this over to Patty Gentrup, who's gonna talk about the 4 strategic focus areas. So we're gonna have you dig in a little bit in terms of your vision about those 4 strategic focus areas and kind of what's next around those.
So I'm the newest member of the band, but what I want to tell you is it's been so great to hear Laura and Jonathan speak so fondly about the community conversations that you had 2.5 years ago or so, and so I'm really was looking forward to tonight, as well as looking forward to October 1st. So, and just listening to what you all have to say about your hopes for this community after having listened to what's already been achieved is just amazing to me. So you know better than I that there were 4 focus areas that were established in the strategic plan. Community identity and connection, safe, well-designed and beautiful places, economic vitality, and a high-performing organization. So what we're going to do here is just, as Laura pointed out, we're going to ask you to reflect on each of those areas, and I'll take you through them individually, and think about, okay, you've accomplished so much in the last 2.5 years, what's next, right? And you did, some of you did mention some specific things, but we're gonna invite you to mention even more specific things. So the first strategic focus area is community identity and connections. And when you look at the strategic plan, and really, I love the paragraphs that really define why this was important for the strategic plan. And this first strategic focus area is really about fostering a relationship with your residents, within the community, with each other, okay? So there were 3 goals: develop a compelling community identity and brand, enhance first impressions, and foster opportunities for all citizens to feel valued and connected within the Raymore community. So as you think about the next 2 or 3 or 5 years, what are some of the things that you would want Raymore to focus on and achieve in that time to, again, develop those relationships within their community so everybody feels connected here? So I'm going to invite you to just take 1 or 2 minutes to think about that. How do you want to foster those community identity connections in the next several years? And then we'll ask you to share them with us all. there is no lack of ideas with this governing body, but in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and interrupt you, and Jonathan's going to help out here with scribing. So just in case you were wondering, we're not only scribing, but we're also typing this, so we will be able to read our hieroglyphics if our handwriting hasn't sufficed. So just go ahead and share with us what are some of your ideas in terms of fostering those community connections in the next several years? Mayor?
Well, keeping what we're planning on October 1st, keeping those types of undertakings alive with our community so that there is that one-on-one opportunity to provide input as to their satisfaction or even dissatisfaction. We also have, I think, a great communication department that allows folks to well, they can complain. I mean, there is that under our website that folks can offer those complaints about what needs to be fixed in the community or so forth. But we also are very responsive to customer needs here at the community, and I'd like to see that maintained. But we just have a great staff, and I think that the interaction between the elected body, who is so supportive of the staff, helps foster that environment as well. So it's, I started to say on the last round, is maintaining an elected body that understands the various needs of the community and looks forward to that input, because the culture of the internal working of an elected body can change, and it can go sour, and we've seen that happen in other communities around us.
So really continued community engagement,
I think that helps.
The two-way communication, so not just pushing out information, but welcoming that feedback. And you should know that Mike's been invited to speak at several different conferences regarding those efforts. So that is recognized, at least regionally, if not nationally.
And keeping our community pride up. There are a lot of people that live here who are extremely proud of living here and being a part of Raymore, and I have seen that go the other way in other communities, and so keeping our pride going and high, I think, is essential, and doing what I first mentioned helps keep that pride going.
Great, thank you. Other hopes for the next several years for community identity and connections? Yes, please.
I've written down to keep moving forward with our innovative ways to beautify our community infrastructures that support further attention to our citizens of the city and our neighboring neighboring citizens, such as our new crosswalks and stuff like that.
So really being more the physical connections, right? Being able to
something that a person can look at and see, and it's tangible, and they say, this is Raymore, instead of having to look for that sign at the edge of the city that says you're in Raymore, that boom, that they know that they're here, such as our new seed art structure down in front of K's.
Ties into that next one we'll talk about as well, is that kind of beautiful.
That's what I'm saying, is something that is visual, something that people can say, that is Raymore, that's where I live, that's home, and that's why I want to live there, is because that's what I like. Then the other thing that I have is to always strive to find new and more effective ways to engage with the population of the city.
Okay, again, another focus on community engagement.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Who else has some ideas for the next several years? Yes. Mm-hmm.
I guess I came out of it a little different angle. I'd like to see us develop more homegrown businesses that connect people to our community, keep them here. Also, add more public space, and we're a town or a city of many neighborhoods, but whatever we can do to bring those people out of those neighborhoods and cross over to other neighborhoods, I think will benefit the connection here to Raymore. And then, you know, we're a city that really doesn't have a downtown or a main street. So I think something if we could do in City Circle that would promote that focal point, or someplace where everybody could go to type of place, something like that.
So really those gathering spaces, then whether it's downtown when you're shopping or going to a coffee shop, or a park where you're coming together for the community events that several of you have already talked about. Okay, great. Yes?
Kind of along that line, I had made note about signature events. That's something we've been working on that I think we can continue to work on, but kind of thinking about how can we use those signature events to connect people who are both alike and different, just in the planning for those events. Could we plan into some of those events opportunities for people to connect with one another when they might just come and do their thing in their own little space, but if we build in opportunities to encourage people to connect with those around them at those events. That was one of the things I was thinking. The other thing I was thinking that might encourage some of those connections would be increasing volunteer opportunities within the city, volunteering on some of our boards, maybe even some support committees for some of the boards, or just advertising some of the volunteer opportunities that we have already in the city and kind of expanding those programs.
Great. So really kind of, because I know you spoke that you felt like that volunteerism had gone up since the last community conversations, but really continuing to build on that and finding other opportunities for people to be engaged.
Yeah, and on those notes, I want to say, to keep what we're doing, stay where we're going, grow the way we're growing, be very open, very transparent. I know all of us are, to the public as elected officials. Reach out to them, let them know that we care. You care, we're all here together. Keep that going. Communicate. Communication is very important. Always communicate. Hear what they have to say, like you're going to do. Respond back in a very positive way. That's where you grow, when you're communicating and people feel comfortable that they're being heard. So I want that, and we're doing that. And I'll tell you something, as a city, we're building this great park down here, Hawk Ridges Park. We're going to have this great playground that even not only is there for everybody, I mean, it's there for everybody, for handicapped children. It's going to be a remarkable park. And it's so remarkable and so expanded that in Fox 4 News the other night had us on. They were showing pictures of our future park. They were just talking about how great Raymore's got this magnificent park coming that's by itself. Nobody can touch this park. It's going to be so magnified and great. And so our word is already getting out. I mean, our Fox Local News is talking about us, how great this community is growing and what they're doing. So that's what we do.
So really continued communication and telling the story, and then being transparent about it.
Transparent, get out there, yes.
Okay. Anything else? Anything, please?
I've kind of felt this way as a teacher when I've come to a large staff. There's a large school with lots of people, and a school runs well when the teachers know each other and they value each other, they care about each other's personal lives. They work together and get things done. The same thing would be in a city operation. If we provide events, maybe bi-weekly events for people to attend in the city, things that'll bring children, adults, and the retirement community together in the same area. And through those shared events, people will recognize each other. So when you're shopping, you say, "Hey, didn't I see you at the event the other day?" And when you go places, the more times that you see people in the same types of events that are positive, the more that you have organic connections being made that will lead to more connections.
So really, again, a focus on events, but really multi-generational events and capitalizing on those events to bring different folks together. Anybody else have anything we need to add to this list on community identity and connections, or are we ready to move to the next topic? Anything that needs to get on this list? Okay, strategic focus area number 2, safe, well-designed, and beautiful places. So again, when you look at the rationale behind that strategic focus area in the plan itself, it says that everybody who comes to Raymore should feel welcome, safe, and at home, no matter where they are. Well, what a great community to be a part of if folks feel that way. So the goals that were established were setting the standard for a safe and secure community, creating a physical environment that inspires a sense of pride in public places, and improves safety for all modes of travel throughout the community. So again, as you not reflect, but as you consider what you hope to accomplish in establishing Raymore as a safe, well-designed, and beautiful place, what would you hope to achieve in the next 2, 3, 5 years? Just take a minute to reflect on that. Okay, I'm going to call on the gentleman down at this end of the table because I feel like I ignored you during the last round.
They hit everything that I said.
So, no, that's great. So what would you like to see achieved in terms of a safe, well-designed, and beautiful place?
Well, one of the things that is a little bit unique about us, is no stranger to anybody in this room. One of the biggest things that affects safe travel through the city is outside of our city, and that's redesign and rebuild of the bridge at 50 Highway and I-49. We've recently put Councilmember Townsend on our committee, and I know he's pushing for that project, and MoDOT's looking at it. Even though it's outside of our borders, it's so very important.
Absolutely.
Our citizens traveling in and out. You all probably came in that way tonight. Absolutely. So that's one that we're certainly going to have to partner with our exterior partners on and get that project done, because it affects our citizens on an everyday basis. And the other thing I had was maintain and build upon our very professional and responsive police department and enhance that image within the community via our communications department.
Oh, nice. Okay. Great. So I'm realizing really that there are external forces that really affect what happens within your community. So looking at the project, which would not be small, would be a significant dollar amount, but really understanding the importance of that to the community. So great.
I'm sorry, can you do the second one more time?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. It was.
Maintain and build upon our very professional and responsive police department and enhance that image via the communications department.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other hopes in this strategic focus area?
To piggyback off of what Councilmember Holman had said, I also had on here improved traffic flow into and out of the city.
Okay.
Also added on here was with regard to our trail system, kind of connected to the larger metro area to give our bike riders and such an opportunity to kind of extend their ride into the city and encourage those to come south into
really
the city.
Having a multimodal transportation system, which really kind of goes back to physical connection of the community, right?
Correct, yes.
As well, okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think one of the things, my father tells me this every time he visits Raymore. He says, if you want to be a leader in your town, you need to work on fixing 58 Highway all the way to 291 so it's a safe mode of travel. It needs to be widened. It needs to be, in some places, flattened. The visibility needs to be better. And I have to agree with that. I've been to funerals of students that have lost their lives on that highway, and most of it is outside of our city limits, but I would certainly like us to partner with whatever agencies that we need to, and maybe even go ahead and move our boundaries to that end to fix it. There are not enough ways to get in and out of our city
So improvements to 58 Highway. Others? Oh, I'm sorry.
I can agree with everything that's been said, but what I wrote down was more neighborhood connectivity, and we have worked on that quite a bit in the last probably 5-6 years, but there's still, you know, in my opinion, you know, to help build the community and into a cohesive neighborhood, neighboring neighborhoods, that, you know, we need connectivity between our different subdivisions. You know, to get to one subdivision, you have to leave one to get to another one, and that's, you know, if we could intertwine those with connectivity, I think that would be absolutely fantastic.
Okay. So more connectedness, and are you talking through physical connections or?
Yes, physical connections, that way, you know, whether it be trails, streets, sidewalks, you know, instead of having to leave Stonegate to go down to the next neighborhood subdivision off to the east. Chief, I'm looking at you and I can't, is Brookside. You know, you have to go north, go east, then go south to, you know, if that connectivity was through there, it would allow neighborhoods to be neighboring neighborhoods.
So established neighborhood connectivity.
Yes.
Anything else in the strategic focus area? Yes.
Yeah, I agree with everybody. I would want to maintain the standard that we have set today. Obviously, keep that going. And kind of my ongoing theme here is all this takes money. So anything that we can do to grow in a manageable way that we don't outpace our infrastructure, so we can still do our sidewalk repairs, our street repairs, all the things that we need to do to maintain what we have today. I think we need to look into that. Also, encourage, or, you know, we have a top-notch staff, and our staff has brought forth, you know, paint striper, a mud jack, you know, all those types of things that kind of add to the bottom line and keep our city safe. And we've got in-house people that can do design work. So, you know, anything that we can do to promote that and keep those individuals with the city is what we need to do. Our police force too, as far as safety, again, it goes back to money. We want to make sure that our city's in a position that we can have the best and the brightest, which we do right now, officers. And we're a place that those type of individuals want to come and work here and be police officers in our city.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, so really not just keeping your eye on that kind of that shiny bauble, but also remember you've got things that you need to maintain here as well. And that's just not the infrastructure, but the quality staff that you have. So, and you specifically mentioned the police department, but you kind of extended that to the rest of the staff as well. Anything else in this focus area? Okay. Focus Area 3, economic vitality, and this was something that many of you touched on as Laura asked you to kind of set your vision for the next several years. The rationale behind this focus area was to be able to live and work in Raymore, as well as do business here. So the goals are fairly lofty, and I would imagine would be ongoing, but having a healthy and sustainable economy, enabling Raymore residents to live and work in the community, and cultivate a climate for prosperous business growth and development. So what are some specific achievements you would like to see in economic vitality in the next several years? Go ahead and take a minute or two. in some ways, I really feel like we could just look at what you talked about in your vision. But let's go ahead, and I'm not going to assume that. So what would a vital economy look like in the next several years for the city of Raymore?
I think we need to think outside the box as far as economic development. I know when we talk about economic development to people in the community, they think retail.
Right.
And there's a lot more happening as far as economic development goes across the country, across the world, that sometimes people don't think about. So I don't know, part of that may be educating the public about the different types of businesses that we could and should be inviting into our community that might not look like storefronts.
So it's about having diversified development, as well as educating the residents in terms of why that's important to your community.
And the value of the jobs that those companies will bring, even though it's not typically what people think about when they think about economic development.
Thank you. Who's next?
That was part of my vision when I was speaking to a good mix of business and retail options, whether that be we have some level of a satellite vocational school or a satellite campus or some college that brings the educational piece along with the jobs with that, whether that be like Councilmember Duggan spoke to, a mixed use type of like an incubator for the home-based businesses or those entrepreneurs that may have a storefront that can kind of cycle through on a 6-month basis or a year basis, where they can have a storefront for their web-based, home-based business, and they have a storefront now. So some different options to where we have locations where we either redevelop what we have existing or built out space that allows some opportunities for growth.
So working with the educational system to train these employees for all the new jobs that are going to be here, right? Looking at a way to foster entrepreneurship. And then also, and I just lost it.
I said
what?
a lot.
No, I put that under entrepreneurship.
I lost my thought too.
Yeah, okay.
And you mentioned the satellite campus, the tech.
That was the college satellite campus.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Others? Economic vitality.
Just one thing I would agree with exactly what's been said so far, but don't ever forget to be on the lookout for unique businesses. If you mention Sikeston, Missouri right now, the first thing that comes to a lot of people's mind is Home of Throwed Rolls. It's a single restaurant business, and there are only 2 in the state, but they put Sikeston and Ozark, Missouri on the map when you drive through there. So if we can ever, and that's not something you just generate by process in itself, but you have to be thinking about it. And if you can ever latch on to something like that, then that sets your identity for who you are.
Can it be open to those opportunities for something that's
Exactly,
unique?
something different. No offense, we have a McDonald's, but every place has got a McDonald's. So something that's one of a kind is
What can set you
really
apart?
sets us apart, exactly,
Okay.
yes.
Great. Yes.
As I started writing, I wrote down growth that puts us ahead, not just catching up with the rest of the metro. And then I kept going and thought if it would be possible as economic delivery systems change, to partner with businesses and volunteer to pilot programs that deliver goods and services to our residents in ways that haven't been thought of yet, and contact those businesses and say, hey, we would like to be a test market for you.
So it goes back to kind of being open to opportunities, unique opportunities, working with the existing businesses to expand and maintain their efforts while at the same time attracting those new ones. What else? Economic vitality, yes.
When I had a meeting, because the mayor couldn't show up, with the governor of Missouri, and or believe me, I would not be there. But he had an interesting take on economic development, and he said, when you have the folks that are trained, high-quality trained people, high-end people, he goes, you will get economic development. It comes. He says it's really difficult to have economic development and then try to bring in trained people. So one of the things that kind of goes back to the community identification. I know we've got a bunch of areas right now that we're developing right now, and I don't want to keep that going, but at the same time, I'd like to see us to be a little unique and different and have some mixed use, kind of a stronger mixed use area that where folks, you know, live in a spot and work in a spot and eat in a spot almost right in the same spot. I don't have those areas identified, but that's what I think would be really strong and interesting. But at the same time, we're a really strong bedroom community. We're 99% of everybody here owns homes, and anytime you talk about multifamily in an area like this, our folks need to be educated on really what that means and really what the modern multifamily means today. So anyway.
Encourage mixed use, consider what modern multifamily looks like, and then also really making sure you have the talent for the businesses that you attract. Okay. Yes.
One other thought I had has to do with kind of the other side of the economic vitality, and you know, what kinds of campaigns can we do to encourage people to shop locally, to think of Raymore businesses first when they're looking to buy something or go out to dinner or things like that. I'm working with the Chamber of Commerce to really almost advertise for. I know we have to be careful about, you know, which ones we're going to tout and which ones we're not, but encouraging people to shop locally and making sure people know what opportunities there are in Raymore before they begin to look out of Raymore.
So really looking for ways to support the existing businesses so that you retain them.
It's going to be imperative that we get a medical specialist in here that specializes in carpal tunnel and tennis elbow, because Jonathan's not going to survive much longer.
Okay, I'm going to use that as a hint to move on. He's got one more. But anything else on economic vitality? Okay, lastly, the fourth strategic focus area is a high-performing organization. And the rationale behind this area was that to provide high-quality services that your residents expect and deserve, you need to make sure that you have a high-quality staff, that you support the staff, and that the staff really prioritizes customer service and develop relationships with your community. So let's just take a minute or two again so what, in terms of a high-performing organization, what would you like to see with the organization? Okay, there's already been a lot of kudos for staff tonight, but what needs to happen in the next several years to make sure that Raymore continues to have a high-performing organization and performs at even a higher level?
It's hard to say other than just doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is hard to expand.
Yeah, and I agree with you, you know, and I think I've already said that somewhat during the first discussion, the first topic. The first goal is that we keep striving for, you know, the top of the top of the heap, you know, and bringing those in, because if we've got that caliber of people, most of these other things will follow through by them doing their job, by them being challenged to do it. So, you know, I just, it's hard to expand more than that, you know, it really is, you know. So, but I just think that's probably one of the most paramount things that we can do for our cities and for ourselves is to keep bringing, and I don't want to point people out, but, I will take this opportunity. Mike Eakey sitting there, and I don't do that for, to give him kudos. But he deserves it, But it's people like that we've brought on in the last 3, 4, 5 years, and that our paradigm in the city has changed, that we've seen these changes come about. And, it's just stuff like that. It's just proof in the
really
pudding.
being an employer of choice.
Exactly, and I said that earlier too,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yes.
Okay, great. I think there was one down here. Come up here.
Yeah, I think it starts at the top. So I think we need to keep and maintain our city manager, and we've got probably the best city manager in the area, and obviously we're going to keep him for another 10 years, right, at least. So we need to make sure he has everything in his tool bag that he can do his job and keep his folks underneath him happy, and he can have quality people. So, whatever that takes or whatever that is, it's hard to get that out of him. But we need to just keep our city manager doing what he's doing, because he's doing a great job.
I'd just like to point out that Jonathan doesn't know how to spell Furborn. He didn't even try, so I win that one.
I can barely pronounce it, too.
Here and then down here.
I would agree. I think that as a body, we already feel like we have the best staff we could possibly have, and it's really improved over the last several years. But the only thing I could think of was just continue to engage the management team as to what is needed on our part from an investment of tax dollars to retain and attract the best employees that we can have.
Okay. So really having the governing body have a solid understanding of what resources are necessary. Staff is one thing, but what are the tools that they need and what support do they need? Great. Down here and then here.
One of the things I was thinking about is, as we have such a high-quality staff, invariably we are going to lose some of them to bigger and different opportunities. I don't want to say bigger and better, but I think with that being a truth, we could do more internships, whether it be with colleges or the local high school. There are a lot of jobs that are in multiple areas, whether it be blue collar, white collar, whatever, that are part of our city staff. And I, as a person that works at the school, don't think that kids have any clue what goes on in the city. They have no clue what's going on. And I think there are a lot of bright people that we are missing by not having any opportunities for them to engage with us.
So kind of grow your own, maybe.
Exactly.
Grow some of your own talent. Maybe also considers if somebody does leave, not because it's bigger and better, but for whatever the circumstances are, kind of who fills that space, maybe succession planning or something like that. Okay. I think, and I'm sorry.
No, it was to piggyback off of, I had also written down this with regard to our staff, maintaining a high quality staff, with them presenting to us as we do the budgets, and we plan out, that they have opportunities for training, certifications, and continued education, so they maintain their skills and having opportunities to interact with other their peers in the industry to come back with best practices or present best practices.
Right.
So continue to foster that growth through those opportunities.
Great. So really professional development and education, right? Which might be specifically certifications, but it might be something broader than that. So.
You go first. Mr. Townsend kind of said what I was going to say, but a lot of these, we see are connected with each other. So the being fiscally responsible with our budget so that we can be sure that we're offering competitive wages to keep our employees here and to keep them happy. Training, of course, was the other thing I had listed. And then the last one is customer service. I know that that's part of this goal, is customer service to the community. And I know that we can't always make everybody happy, but people should never feel ignored. So I think that needs to be one of our goals, that people never are calling or approaching someone from the city and feeling like they're ignored or not getting return phone calls. So I think we still have that area we could continue to improve.
So continue that focus on customer service. Yes.
What I'd like to say, and sound off on everything said, but basically this city management team, all we have, the parks and everything we have, one thing about them, they're never satisfied. They don't feel they've done enough. Every day they come here, I can tell, knowing Jim and the chief and all these mystery, they always want more. I mean, I know they come to work and say, hey, we're not satisfied. This is as good as we can get. They don't believe that. They believe there's something, the next day there's more at the top of that mountain. And they're always striving to go up higher and higher to do better. And that's why they're so good and they make the city so well and our job so good as elected officials.
Great. Wow. That's a great place to, I think, end the conversation regarding a high-performing organization. So thank you for sharing a little bit with us about your hopes for the next several years. Of course, on October 1st, you're going to get to hear from your residents and your constituents in terms of what they'd like to see. And so it'll be fun to see kind of where those overlap and what great ideas they come up with as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura. And just to close out the evening, Laura's going to talk with you about what to expect on October 1st and what that looks like.
All right. Thanks, Patty. I do have one more question for you before we just talk about the details of the engagement. I just want to make sure if there are some expectations you have, if there are some specific things you want to learn from the community as a result of the October 1st meeting, I'd just like to capture those. Are there some thoughts you have that you want to make sure you hear from the community? What would you like to learn? What would make this a successful engagement for you as a council?
I'd like to know if the path that we've taken is the appropriate path, that they are happy with that path that we've gotten on and we're moving forward with, and if while on that path, if there are other things that they feel like could enhance the living quality here in the community.
So kind of the level of satisfaction of citizens with the path you're on, and what else might enhance the quality of life for citizens.
Mm-hmm.
Other thoughts from the council? Yeah.
Somebody mentioned earlier about making improvements on 58 east of the city. I would like to see if, I'd like to gauge the interest of our residents in possible annexation of that area and making the improvements to that along with MoDOT. So improvements on 58 East and possible annexation.
So you're interested in hearing whether or not they have any particular input about that whole thought of annexation and the whole issue of 58 Highway. Okay. Other things you'd like to learn from the community?
I would like to have an opportunity to offer an opportunity for people to basically say what they came to say. I know that it's important as far as the communication goes and the evening goes to have very guided and directed conversations, because if we just leave it open to be willy-nilly, we can leave with nothing that we can really grasp onto. But I feel like last time there were some people who maybe left and didn't feel like they got to say what they wanted to say. Maybe they had something that didn't fit into one of our categories that they wanted to share. So an opportunity for them to have just an open way to share, whether it's written, whether it's, I mean, I don't know, but just a way to kind of get something out there, even if it doesn't fit our conversation.
Yeah, so making sure, even if we have some, pretty structured categories and questions, that there's a space there and there's a process there, that people don't leave with what they had in their mind when they came unsaid, and that it's welcoming for them to have the chance to share that. Okay, great. Open part of the process. Okay. Thank you. Other thoughts? Okay. All right. So the event itself, doors will open at 5:30 2 weeks from now. The event will start at 6. We'll probably run 2.5 to 3 hours like last time to be able to get through the input. We would anticipate welcome from the mayor, comments from your city manager, and then we'll kind of take over on the process. We have the same partner here from a technology perspective that we had last time, Todd Erickson from CoVision, although he's has with a different named company this time, but again, the same process. So it'll look pretty similar for those of you who are part of the last process, and we're really seeing kind of two main goals, and they match up exactly with what the mayor was saying in terms of gauging what citizens are thinking about the path you're on, about the progress, about the strategic plan. You know, what citizens are thinking about that. How do citizens feel about the progress? And then what else citizens expect or desire? You know, what other goals, ideas, thoughts do they have moving forward? And so we'll work through a pretty organized way to do that. The city of, is going to be having childcare on site, food on site, those things, so making it as easy as possible for citizens to engage in the process. As far as the council at the meeting, we'll handle that the way we did last time. I mean, your role really is more as, you're convening this, but then you're really kind of an observer during the meeting. And so we'll have you sitting at your own table, probably towards the front of the room. You'll have a chance to kind of observe the process, obviously greet people as they come in. And then we'll have some ways for you to be doing some things and perhaps reflecting upon what you're hearing from the citizens, even during the course of the meeting. So again, pretty similar to last time, but we're starting in a different place. Because we're starting at a place where you have a plan. We need to test the satisfaction with that progress and sort of that what's next from citizens. After the engagement, we will take all that information. We will write that up. We'll do some of that comparison that Patty just referenced in terms of some of the things that you said today. We'll develop a report and also point out if we're hearing some things that maybe might suggest either some new goals or some new themes or things like that. And just as we did last time, only based on the single engagement. So that's kind of the plan. Any questions, comments about that? Before we let you get on with the rest of your business tonight? All right. Thank you. We're excited. Thank you so much.
One of the items that I talked with the team about, that the management team has talked about, and that the core team has talked about relative to the process is one of the things I think we can be most proud about with the strategic plan in each of the focus areas is there isn't the element, and it was deliberate, there isn't the element of check the box. Oh, now this one's done, we can set that on the shelf. That's the importance of having this listening meeting for you all and for senior staff as well, so that we don't get into that trap. And this is actually a new type of strategic plan that we have developed, that we've been using. It's more, we're running through the continuum of it. And just like anything else that is being successful, with success, I think each success you reach, the blinders can get just a little bit bigger. So we got to take those off and see if we're doing it right, do a good critical assessment, and this is going to certainly afford us that opportunity to listen and make sure that we're in sync with our citizens. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so our next item is the informational overview on Emergency Management Command Center vehicle. As you know, during the budget process that we initiated here the other night, that was one of the items that was on a list, and there was a lot of interest in that. We wanted more feedback on that from the chief, and so I'll turn it over to Mr. Feuerborn.
And I will turn it immediately over to Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Feuerborn. It's exciting to listen, obviously, to the folks talking about strategic planning because they've asked the council to look into the future. And obviously, as we discuss this vehicle, what we're talking about, and I'm going to turn it pretty quickly over to Mr. Murdoch, but as we talk about this vehicle and we talked about the needs of a Raymore 20 years from now, 10 years from now, you know, that's what we're asking the council to look at, not Raymore today, but Raymore today and in the future. So I know that you have the white paper that Mr. Murdoch and I wrote that basically describes the sort of the foundation of what this vehicle would look like, and certainly happy. We're not going to get down into the weeds on it because, you know, we're just looking for some discussion to move forward, and happy to answer any questions. But I'll turn it over to Mr. Murdoch to hit some of those highlights.
Thank you very much for inviting us here to present this tonight. As you probably saw in the memo and white paper that we gave you regarding this particular vehicle, for the past several years we've been operating with a small tow-behind trailer for the emergency management and mobile communications unit for the police department. That trailer obviously is very old, as you probably saw in the memo, and was purchased from the South Metro Fire Department a couple decades ago, or was built a couple decades ago. It has significant damage throughout, not only from water leaks that we've tried to fix throughout the years, but it has also a rusted base on it, and essentially it's operating or not able to be operated at full capacity because of some of these deficiencies. What we're asking the council to do is obviously, just like Chief said, look way into the future with us here. And instead of essentially doing a Band-Aid solution year after year after year and purchasing either a new trailer for a few $1,000s every couple of years, we're actually asking to go with something that is more comparable for a growing community. And that's why we're requesting an actual mobile communications vehicle or mobile command vehicle, or permission to at least start looking for the mobile communications vehicle. Most of the things that we've asked for, some of the things that we would like to see within the vehicle, are located obviously within this particular paper that you already have. It's important to note that between emergency management and the police department, our group obviously would still want to be able to finalize what some of those parameters would be. We obviously would be going to multiple companies to see what they could provide us and to our community. And obviously this would be something that could be used not only by the city of Raymore, but other agencies as well, should they need it, within not only the Kansas City area, but even as you go farther as more of a regional aspect as well. One of the things here within our city that we want to try to avoid is having to ask somebody to bring their resource to help us. And this would alleviate a lot of those concerns. And so more than anything tonight, we wanted to open it up for you all to have questions, since I know that there's information here within this particular packet. And we'd be happy to answer any questions about kind of how we see this vehicle being used, what some of those things would be, or what some of the things within the vehicle would be. But more than anything, yeah, just answer any questions that you guys have on it, because I'm not sure what you guys are thinking. So.
Thank you, Ryan. I know you've got a pretty decent white paper you guys put together here describing the aspects of the vehicle and what you would consider as paramount to be, how it would be equipped. So have you had an opportunity to talk to any vendors yet?
What we've done initially so far is put together what the leading companies throughout the country are and who have sold some vehicles in our local area, with the thought process being that then we could go and visit those particular locations here in our region, look at those particular vehicles, get the pros and cons of how those were built by those different companies, and then go and seek those proposals and then make the best decision after that.
Sure. Okay. Mr. Allman, did you have something?
Yeah, I had two questions. I read through the paper with great interest, one conceptual and one operational. So the conceptual one was, this is actually, we call this a mobile command center, but the intent is a comprehensive use vehicle, whether that be an Operation 100, whether that be a citywide weather emergency, whether that need to be an emergency session of the council if possible. Was that correct, Mr. Fearborn? I believe you mentioned that before.
Absolutely.
So this is going to meet a wide variety of possible unseen needs in particular. So that was my conceptual question. My operational question, you list a potential of a Freightliner M2 truck chassis. So we're getting away from the 80s, 90s style of the RV. Is that basically what you're saying here? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
More, and the reasoning, I'm not sure. What's the reasoning behind that? More longer life? Is that just what the current style is, or?
Actually, for most of these companies, you're actually going to get a better price per square foot if you go with the truck chassis, as they consider the footage behind the driver, the two driver's seats up in the front. So a 30-foot truck under the M2 Freightliner is 30 feet behind the two driver's seats. The RV counts those two seats since they swivel around. Outside of that, yes, the truck actually will be a little bit more durable even than an RV. But I would want to say, and Chief and I talked about this as well, is that I still think all options would be on the table in this particular case. We would still be investigating the RV style as well, because I would never want to leave anything.
I have no preference. I
chance
just,
here. Yeah.
That's kind of what, when you typically see one, that's what the style has been in the past for a number of years. I was a little surprised. I'm not opposed to it. I was just a little bit curious about things. So then is it a custom box basically built behind that system? Is that what we're looking at when we talk about what's built on top of the chassis?
Yes, and as Ryan mentioned, as we've looked at some of the companies that have built those vehicles for agencies here in the metropolitan area that we will be interested in going to look at if we're allowed to go ahead, is to make sure that because it's so specialized, to make sure that we have all of those things in the vehicle that we feel that we need, based on what the capability is of the company that would build it to our specifications.
I'm in support of this. I know you mentioned something about approval to proceed with the feasibility study. I'm in support of it. I'm also in support. You mentioned possible used vehicle. That's what we've got. Why go there? Let's get a new one. That's where I lay with this. That's all I have.
Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple quick questions for you, Ryan. I don't know, maybe I missed it in here, but do we know if this vehicle will be require a CDL for the operator?
It will.
It'll
yes.
be over 33
Yeah,
GW.
and we talked about the number of people within the department that we would want to make sure were trained up, so that we had multiple people able to operate the vehicle and accompany the vehicle whenever it went out on deployment. Do
the company that make this, do they offer vehicles that are non-CDL, or are they're all too heavy to meet that threshold?
Most of the vehicles, once we get into especially that 27-foot and over range, are going to be too heavy and are going to require the CDL.
Yeah, when I saw 30 foot, that's what first thing I thought. And then lastly, are we planning to, or do we have a notion to let this be borrowed by other communities, or is it's going to strictly stay in? Chief, I see you shaking your head no, and that's the answer I wanted to hear.
No borrowing.
Okay.
We would anticipate, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, like I was having a seizure here. We anticipate mutual aid use by other communities. I'll use Joplin as an example. The number of vehicles that deployed to an emergency of that size. So we would anticipate deploying, but deploying with our personnel.
Operating it ourselves.
Absolutely.
Perfect. We have these in the military, and they're very expensive and very easy to break things. Thank you. Well,
and one of the things that I mentioned, in the work group that we've already put together, both, Mr. Murdoch and folks from the police department, I was involved with the command post, when I worked for Kansas City, and we had probably in Kansas City 30 or 40 people who were all qualified to drive the vehicle and deploy with the vehicle. So we would want to make sure that we had adequate personnel to deploy with the vehicle, regardless of the use, whether it was in Raymore or some surrounding community need. Our personnel would go with the vehicle.
And lastly, will it have any kind of a dormitory? Will you be able to sleep in this overnight if need be? Most of them aren't, but I thought I would ask if there's any provisions for that.
Well, we don't anticipate that. But,
okay.
But bathroom, obviously, and kitchen facilities for a long deployment, but not sleeping quarters per se.
Right. I won't ask to use it for vacations or tailgating then. Thank you.
Mr. Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, my concern is, and I'll ask you to clarify it, here not too long ago, Mayor served on the 911 digital, the Cass County emergency service communications, and then our communications, we've upgraded those here too. With this, how comfortable is staff that with future upgrades of communication, this and that those will be able to be incorporated into this vehicle if and when those do come about. You know, I think right now, you know, I'm sure that what we're going to be getting will be compatible with what we have, but when we have to upgrade, what would we expect, you know, as far as that also at that point?
Well, I know, you know, in the paper, we mentioned the Cass County Emergency Services Board as being one agency that we might want to partner with, you know, maybe with funding, maybe with equipment, but we would always want to make sure that that equipment is compatible with the current equipment. So as the upgrades occur to the communications equipment that's here on site, we would do that same thing in the vehicle, because the notion is, obviously, if this building is destroyed or our communication capability is destroyed here, that those individuals would have, it would have to be a seamless transition into the vehicle so we could continue communication. So it has to be the exact same type of equipment going forward.
I just want to add to that real quick is that most of these companies that design these vehicles will design the wiring and space layout within them with a redundant feature to be able to add to the technology if necessary. So if there needs to be upgrades within the vehicle, typically speaking, it's already wired and formatted and ready to go to add those pieces of equipment. Not only replace equipment, obviously, but if we should have the need to have to add pieces of technology, that vehicle will already be ready to handle it.
Mr. Barber.
Yeah, I got a question. Excuse me. This is getting down the weeds a little bit, but where would we store a vehicle this size and something that costs $500,000? I mean, I don't even like letting my car sit outside. So should we be looking at some place to, you know, if we do go forward with this, someplace where we can put it and keep it in safe keepings and keep it nice for, since it costs so much?
Well, I was going to say we could park it at your house, but apparently you don't want your car.
You can't go in my garage. Yeah.
I know their group, and they're working with me on that. That is a consideration. It is going to have to be stored indoors. We have a couple of plans for that we're already considering if the council determines that we're going to move forward with this.
Figured you did. Thanks. Ms. Circo.
So if we were going to store it, I'm assuming we would have to find a place that's very close to get to on a quick response, but safe and secure. And when you're talking regional, how regional are we expanding on that when you talk about using it regional?
I'm primarily speaking within the MARC region, so going into the 9-county Kansas and Missouri region, primarily speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is not to be couched as negative or anti this vehicle, but just informational. How many cities with populations of under 50,000, and does this county have one? Are there cities around us that have one of these, and does the county have one?
The county does have a vehicle. As a matter of fact, they deployed it on our officer-involved shooting back in February. And so, again, as Ryan mentioned, you know, reaching out to, you know, another jurisdiction for that resource. We've identified a number of vehicles in the area, places that we would like to go look if we get the approval to do so. Jurisdictions like Olathe and others here in the metropolitan area, just to get the idea of what we'd like for that to look like. We haven't done any specific research into jurisdictions under 50,000. We've looked at similar sized cities across the United States that are 25,000 and less, and, you know, have found a number of them, you know, all across the United States. So again, it's the idea of where we'll be in 10 years, and we've found a number of cities across the United States that are similar in size to us.
Anything else? Mr. Holman.
Yeah, a vehicle like this is probably for most people not familiar with police or emergency management. They look at this, to use a line from a movie, of course, the police have themselves an RV. But it serves such a great function in the unthinkable. If you've followed anything of the hurricane aftermath in Puerto Rico, they are today, a year later, finding containers of food rotting on docks that rats and rodents have gotten into. Because it wasn't assigned out. That's what the real value of this becomes. We may be able to borrow the county's vehicle for an individual incident, but if we had a major weather disaster through here that affected multiple counties, we're probably without the use of that vehicle, depending upon who got hit the hardest. These vehicles serve as a single point of command and control function. If we have water donated, where does that water need to be deployed to, and who deploys it? Who keeps the books on that? Who paid for it? It all comes under the ICS command function that both of them are obviously very familiar with, but it gives you a single point of contact for everything that goes on within that event from beginning to end. And it's really great if you have a lot of physical damage within your community too. Plus, it'll be used for a lot of other less extensive and the unthinkable events that we don't want to have, but it does become very important in something like that.
School functions, community events, thank you, for bringing those things up. We imagine, obviously deploying it in all of our training scenario. We do active shooter trainings, at the schools and all sorts of things. So we will imagine deploying it frequently for all sorts of events if the unthinkable doesn't happen.
Yes, go ahead.
Have we explored funding sources such as FEMA or anything else?
Go ahead, Ryan.
We have within our group, we've talked about multiple avenues of funding. One of the things, though, that could be difficult in relation to grants is the funding cycles that are coming up, being that this is 2018 money and we're going into the 2019 grant cycle year. I did mention to Chief, though, that I am going to be looking at the 2-year grant cycles that are coming up here for 18-19 through FEMA and DHS. To see what might be available, especially in terms of recovery. And I think we could also actually qualify this under a mitigation grant. I looked up some of those definitions too, to make sure that I think we could fall under that. And I do think we could. It's just a question of whether or not they'd be available, but we are going to look into those.
Go ahead, Jay.
I see at the end of your white paper, it talks about approval given to to proceed with the feasibility study. Is that what staff needs tonight?
Certainly, sir.
Would it be part of the budget process, though? I mean, as we're moving forward, are you guys wanting to set aside that amount in some form or fashion to move forward with the feasibility on this particular item? Because I kind of foresee that as being part of the budget process.
I was just going off of this last line. I didn't know if there was something specific you needed tonight as far as a consensus for us to do something. Was really what I was looking for.
Informally, I think, in light of the fact that the council had asked that this be brought back as a formal item, we've kind of internally started the feasibility study to get to the point where we could report out to you. But it would be, at this point, more of a, for one of the future budget meetings, is this a line item that you want edited into the budget, or do you want the interim of a study done beforehand, a formalized study done beforehand? But staff has certainly been moving forward fairly rapidly just to get to this point where we could provide you information this evening.
But how more rapidly can they move in order to get to us to meet our deadlines for the approval of the budget?
Yeah. Can we? Let me talk with them, and I'll write the council on that particular item. Thanks.
Okay.
I apologize. I was just a bit confused. I thought I want to make sure we follow this, step by step. I'm in support of the project, and I would support certainly putting that money into the budget to purchase this item. I just want to make sure I wasn't missing something with that last paragraph, and there was something else that you wanted to do or you needed. I was going to make sure we got that tonight if that was necessary.
The white paper was actually prepared before the last meeting. So at the last meeting, it was one of these, is the council going to be open to this? Is it not going to be open to this? So we've kind of had our foot on the gas since.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think we do know that there was some interest during the budget process when that list of items was provided to the council, which kind of, I mean, it's kind of a good segue to talk about item C, unless there's something prepared for tonight's proposed budget discussion we're probably going to skip that due to the length of this meeting, but if anybody has something prepared that you wanted to discuss with regard to those, that particular issue, because that's kind of where we're at now. We've had the presentation from the city manager with regard to the budget. There's that money set aside for those potential needs and wants lists that were presented to us, and or anything else that council members feel is necessary for us to consider for the 2019 budget. And absent any in particular item, we'll push it to the next meeting. But I think I'm almost hearing set aside of what, 500,000 set aside out of that million. Is it $1.2 million or $1 million?
Well, it's $1 million.
Right at $1 million.
Spend if we're going to keep 200,000.
And then we really need to discuss some of those other items on that list as well. And I don't know if anybody's here prepared to talk about those things tonight. It is part of the process of our work sessions up to the time of the preparation of the budget to come before us at a council meeting. Yeah.
I have two minor items on the list I'd like the council to consider. One would be a generator, a backup generator for Centerview, and an oven for Centerview. We put in an oven. It's a low-cost item, changes that venue from a, am I speaking out of turn? You're turning your head towards me.
We found out from code we cannot put an oven in.
Ah, disregard, sir.
Yeah. What about the backup generator? Was that on your list of items? It was not. It's a new one.
And that kind of tied into me to the emergency management function. Should we need to use that facility for long-term planning preparation in the event of a natural disaster or housing of our people? I think it's a relatively reasonable, long-life, low-cost item to add to that place where we might use it someday, unfortunately.
You want to look into that and see what the cost might be associated
We'll absolutely
with that?
have a cost for you all by 2 weeks from now on that item.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything else? Mr. Burke? Didn't see your hand.
No problem.
His big head was in the way.
Yeah, I've been trying to get around.
Trying to read lips.
Thank you. I wanted to propose that on the budget to the Celex ES license plate reader for one car. I wanted to propose that we purchase one for the car and then another one that could be used either in a different car or in a trailer or some other type of way that the police department would be able to utilize that. With one, if the car's down, that's not something we can use. If we have more than one, I really think I think that the plate reader is something that could really help with the amount of transient crime that comes in and out of our city. We want people to come to Raymore when they have money in their pocket to spend if they don't live here, not empty pockets coming in to Raymore, in my personal opinion.
For deployment purposes, I'd ask for the chief to talk about that a little bit, because I'm not sure that a stationary use of that is what we might see as a tool, but I'll defer to you on that.
Well, I'm not as familiar with a stationary deployment. However, if it could be attached to another vehicle or maybe to a trailer, and maybe put in a high crime area, that it wouldn't be roving patrol as much as you had the presentation when I was out of town at your last regular meeting about theft from auto and stolen autos. And if we're experiencing a spike in crime in certain neighborhoods, deployment of an asset like that might be beneficial, because it would be reading every vehicle license plate that came through that area, as opposed to being mobile. So usually stationary is not a way that type of asset is deployed, but if we were to put it in an area where we were seeing a spike in crime, it could potentially be beneficial. I just would have to do more research on having it at a fixed location, but not permanently affixed someplace where it was stationary, but it could be moved around.
Hey, I just have a bit of trepidation about that because of my experience with one of our trailers when I was still chief.
When they
somebody
blew it up.
So, if it's just sitting out there as a target and people know what it's being used for.
I just wanted to
target of opportunity.
follow up. I just want the police to have more opportunities and more options in their tool belt to be able to utilize this. With one, I think it limits the ability to use it at times, and I want you to have more options.
Yeah, maybe it's just 2 vehicles. Right. Yeah. What, Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm the same way. I'm going to, always vote to give the employees the tools they need that they think that they can utilize from their experience and what they expect and what they know is happening in our community. Where I've got a little bit of, I guess the word that you've said is intrepidation, is that, I appreciate it, Joe. I do, and I can support it. But I don't want to sit and I don't want to. One of my first lessons that I learned as a city councilman, as I was elected city councilman, not city mayor, not the chief of police, meaning that I trust that they know what they need and what they want and what they feel that they can use. But I'm just not comfortable with just buying something, saying, here, go use it, and go make use of this. And that's where I'm at, Joe. I think it's a great idea, and if chief needs it or the city staff needs it, by gosh, I'll be right there. It's just that I just don't want to buy something and force them to go out and do something because that's what I think I should be making them do.
Jay, did you have some?
Well, I understand your concern, certainly, but this is not brand new technology. Kansas City's been using this for a while. You'll see Kansas City really roll it out and make it visible when they had like the highway shooter. You got cars, the readers all over the place. And if you read the paper, Belton just is, they're getting 3 to 5 on a grant, I think. So they're going to be deploying them over across the street as well. So I think it's something that's coming, and I think it's got some value as far as, I agree with your position in that we should certainly rely on the chief to tell us what she thinks the best use of those are and what the greatest need might be, whether that's let's do one now, maybe a year from now after we test run it, or let's do the 2 in separate cars and we'll give some feedback to you.
Okay. Mr. Berenson.
If we're ready to move on, I have another item I'd like to request if we're done talking about the scanners.
Well, like I said, we're getting into late hour. We have another meeting and another work session that we might be able to dedicate a little more time to, rather than kind of squeeze things in here. But real quick,
I'll be really brief about this. So, Mr. Fairborn, I understand that we recently rolled out the new insurance proposal to our employees, and I know we had to go away from Blue Cross Blue Shield because of the great cost. Could we figure out what I know our insurance rates for the employees went up just a little bit, is that right? Maybe 5%?
5 to 8%, yes, sir.
Are you able to give us an amount of what it would take if we had the money in the budget to make it so the employees' insurance rates did not go up at all? For example, would $50,000 or $60,000 in additional money keep their rates the same as what they were?
I can get that amount to you. I would warn you it's a recurring cost. So it would continue to draw fund balance down until there was none.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Back on the last item, should we consider, we have the cost for one in there and we know what it would take to get another one, so just keep the presentation the same for now, get the information on the insurance, and get the information on, what's my other piece of information? The generator.
Yeah.
And Mr. Murdoch whispered to Chief, who whispered to me that generator costs may go even lower because we may be eligible for some grant money for that.
Excellent. Good deal. All right, so we still have to go into executive session tonight. Oh, we still have one item here. Oh, yeah, board and commission appointments, yeah, I was going to move right on past that. Here, I'll just pass these out to you guys. These are the ones I'm recommending. And for the tree board, it's Bill Rust. It's not a ward-specific appointment. And then the arts commissions, we do have two. I've talked to a councilman in Ward 2. Laura Richardson and James Gribble for Ward 4 for the Arts Commission. And those are the only 3 appointments that are coming up. So if you have any feedback, holler at me if you would, please. That's really all I have on that. So now we can move on to other. Is there anything other that we want to talk about tonight? Yes, sir.
Just one very brief, want to remind the city council that Mr. Icky and myself will be leaving on Friday for ICMA in Baltimore. We'll not be returning until Thursday morning.
Okay.
So we will be out for the council meeting on Monday night. My understanding is the mayor will also be out for the council meeting on Monday night.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I also will be gone Monday night on a conference myself.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody else have anything? If not, is there a motion to go into executive session?
Mr. Mayor, move we go in executive session, discuss litigation matters in accord with RSMO 610.021, subsection 1.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Motion been made and seconded that we go into executive session. Could I have a roll call?
Councilman Holman?
Yes.
Councilman Townsend?
Yes.
Councilman Kellogg?
Yes.
Councilman Berenson?
Yes.
Councilman Serco?
Yes.
Councilman Abdelgawad?
Yes.
Councilman Burke?
Yes.
Councilman Barber?
Yes.
Thank you. We'll go into executive session now, and when we're adjourned, we're adjourned.